You're running a totalitarian colony. You shape your citizens' fears, their loyalties, the bonds between them, and the feuds that split them apart. Then, when it's time to fight, you don't hand the mission off to a squad icon on a map. You drop in yourself, first person, alongside your own soldiers. Sacrifice the weak, feed the strong. The store page says that with a completely straight face, and the dark humor tag is doing real work there. Here's why that framing matters to me, and not just to the marketing. Most colony builders eventually collapse into a sandbox. You solve food, you solve housing, and then you're decorating. I drift off at exactly that point every time, without fail. The survival layer here is the thing that keeps me honest, because it means there's a real losing state sitting under all the optimizing, and optimizing without a losing state is a screensaver with extra steps. Adjustable difficulty is in there. Full controller support too, which surprised me for something stacking this much management on top of a bullet hell combat layer. So what do 10 minutes actually look like? You recruit workers and assign them out together, and the resource list is wide enough that you're never just chasing one currency. Crafting sits on that. Automation sits on the crafting. Base building is where all of it lands. That's the half you can play with a coffee in your hand. The other half is loud. Expeditions pull you off the colony and out into space to gather resources and fight for them, and combat is first-person, dodge-based, ability-driven. You're reading an incoming attack, rolling out of it, then dumping a special into the window that opens. Enemies level, so a route you cleared comfortably before isn't a guaranteed clear the next time you run it. The battlefields are procedurally generated, which is the roguelite half of the DNA doing its job. And then the two halves close the circle, which is the bit I keep chewing on. You can capture enemies out there and recruit them into your crew. Prisoners become labor. Labor becomes production. Production becomes the gear you carry back out on the next expedition. Weapon upgrades and special abilities unlock along the way, and that's where the hours are hiding for me. Every unlock reads as an experiment I want to run right now, not a checkbox I'm ticking off. That's the pull, not completion. Variance. Now, this is the part where I lose some of you on purpose, and I'm doing it early because I'd rather you close the tab than refund at hour 3. You should get this if you want a builder with a real losing state under it, where an expedition going sideways actually threatens the thing you spent an hour arranging. You should get this if unlock-driven experimentation is what keeps you in a game. If I need to see what this new item does to a run is a sentence you've said out loud to nobody. And you should get this if a colony's political layer feeding straight into a first-person firefight sounds layered rather than exhausting, because that connection is the entire pitch. Skip this if you're coming from cozy builders. If Factorio or City Skylines is your comfort zone, the unpredictability here is going to feel hostile, and I want to be clear, that's not a flaw, that's the identity of the thing. Skip this if you want tactical readability in your combat, meaning clean information, clear positioning, decisions you can plan 2 steps ahead. This is dodging and ability timing, not a wargame, and one of the sharper criticisms floating around is exactly that the fighting lacks a strategic layer. Skip this if you need a finished product on day 1. It launches into early access with the roadmap still sitting on the store page. Waiting is a completely reasonable call, and the demo exists precisely so you can make it yourself. Okay, so the mechanic I want to sit on, because it's why I'm on the buy side instead of the wait side, is what happens to the people you capture. Taking an enemy prisoner isn't a resource pickup. You pull a hostile off a procedurally generated battlefield, you drag them home, and you convert them into a true believer. Which means the fear and loyalty systems aren't flavor text on a citizen card. They're the machinery you use to process a captive into a productive body. Bonds and feuds live in that same layer. You're not watching an abstract morale bar. You're deciding which relationships to encourage and which ones to let rot on the vine. That's the weight of the decision thing I keep chasing in strategy games and almost never actually get. Most management sims hand you choices where the wrong answer costs you a bit of efficiency. Here, the wrong answer is a person, and the game is entirely comfortable watching you sacrifice one to feed another. It's a grim little machine, and I found it more compelling than I expected going in. It also explains why the swings land. A run that's cruising and then comes apart, or one that looked dead and gets hauled back by a lucky pull, only matters if the colony behind it can absorb the damage or visibly fail to. It can. That's the connective tissue between the shooter and the sim, and the split reception seems to talk right past it. The praise lands on the mix being fun. The praise never quite says why the mix works. Real quick, if this is saving you from a bad early access purchase, a like helps more than you think. Now, the other half of the story, because this has problems and I'm not going to paper over them. Clunky is the word that comes up most across the coverage, and I don't think it's unfair. when you're stacking a colony sim, an automation layer, a crafting tree, and a first-person combat system into one interface, scenes show. That's the cockpit fatigue risk here, and it's real. A long setup phase followed immediately by back-to-back combat sorties is exactly the shit that wears me down in this genre. The repetition complaint is the one I'd push back on hardest, but only partly. Procedural generation front loads your discovery. The first stretch is constant novelty, and then the pattern recognition kicks in and the battlefields start rhyming with each other. Whether the unlocks outrun that curve is the actual open question, and in early access, nobody can answer it honestly yet. And I'll be straight with you about the ceiling, because it's my consistent blind spot. I'm the wrong person to promise you a great endgame. 3 strategy games in a row now, I've never reached the finish, and the pattern is too clean to keep calling it an accident. The discovery hook is what gets me in the door. When the post-completion replay loop is thin, I don't reopen the file. So buy this for the mid-game arc, where systems are still unlocking and the colony is still fragile. Don't buy it expecting a grand finale. And remember, the finale might not even be built yet. So should you actually buy this on the 10th? Yes, and the caveat is the demo. Play it first. It's free, it's live right now, and it'll tell you fast whether the dodge and ability combat clicks, because that's the single hinge this whole thing swings on. If the shooting bores you, the colony half will not rescue it, and no amount of prisoner conversion fixes that. If it does click, I'd buy at launch rather than sitting on it, because early access is when the balanced conversation is loudest and your feedback actually lands somewhere. Pax Autocratica is a buy for me, on the strength of 3 things specifically. A survival layer that gives optimizing a point, unlocks that make me want to test a new run immediately, and a capture and convert loop that ties the shooting and the building into one machine instead of 2 apps sharing a launcher. Calling this repetitive before it's even launched is the lazier read, and I'll defend that in the comments all day. So tell me where your line sits on early access. Is a colony sim crossed with a roguelike shooter something you buy day one, or something you wishlist and circle back to later? Subscribe if you're tired of reviewers who won't take a side.